March 1876. A cloudless sky over a farm in Bath County, Kentucky, and falling through the air are scattered pieces of fresh meat. Thousands of miles away, at the base of Mount Fuji, sits a dense forest where the natural ambient sounds of the world seem to completely vanish. And on an incredibly remote Pacific island, hundreds of colossal, multi-ton stone faces stand vigil, miles from any mainland. Confronted with events and landscapes that defy immediate logic, the human mind struggles with the vacuum of information. We fill those empty spaces with folklore, ghosts, and myths to make sense of what we cannot easily explain. But strictly applying historical documentation and scientific inquiry to these events doesn't erase the wonder. Peeling back the supernatural stories reveals realities that are far more complex and ultimately far more fascinating. On an ordinary day on Mrs. Crouch's farm in Bath County, Kentucky, the routine was shattered. What appeared to be fresh animal tissue began dropping across an area of the property. Multiple local witnesses examined the material, comparing it to beef or other meat, all raining down from an entirely clear sky. Contemporary reports collected the material and recorded the bizarre event, treating it as a literal historical occurrence rather than a local tall tale. In the 19th century, there were no commercial airplanes overhead. There were no industrial accidents to point to. The material simply fell into an isolated field with no obvious source above. This diagram illustrates the biological mechanism of the leading scientific theory: vultures. When a group of vultures feeding on a carcass are startled and suddenly take flight, they can defensively regurgitate partially digested food to lighten their weight. The biology supports this sequence of events. However, the original reports are over a century old, and modern forensic analysis is impossible with the limited surviving evidence. The exact biological origin of that shower remains permanently locked in 1876, leaving it as a purely natural, yet unresolved, historical anomaly. Across the world in Japan, at the base of Mount Fuji, Aokigahara Forest stretches out in an expanse of overwhelmingly dense vegetation. Over time, the forest has cultivated an unsettling modern reputation. Visitors frequently report a profound, unnatural silence, accompanied by an intense, lingering sensation that they are being watched by something unseen. The physical terrain itself provides the explanation. The forest grew over ancient volcanic eruptions. The porous lava rock and rough cavities beneath the tree roots act as an acoustic sponge, physically absorbing sound waves and creating an extreme level of natural sensory deprivation. When a person enters a completely silent, visually isolating environment, their mind attempts to fill the void. If they have already heard the dark folklore and ghost stories surrounding the area, their expectation actively shapes their perception, manufacturing feelings of dread. The volcanic geography is enough to disorient anyone. Aokigahara physically alters human perception, demonstrating that the deeply unsettling nature of the forest originates within the human mind, completely independent of the supernatural. Far out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean lies Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island. Spread across its rugged hills are hundreds of the Moai, massive volcanic stone monuments carved far from where they eventually stood. For generations, researchers faced a singular mechanical puzzle. They needed to understand how a historical society, without modern machinery or heavy equipment, managed to transport stones weighing dozens of tons across the island. A long-standing popular narrative suggested the civilization collapsed because they destroyed their own environment to build these statues. Modern research shows this version of events is entirely too simple. This diagram demonstrates an ingenious method of transportation. By applying alternating rope tension from 3 angles, teams could rock the massive stone statues, allowing them to walk upright. Expanding to the island's topography, this technique highlights a highly coordinated understanding of physics and engineering. While environmental pressures played a role, the true devastation to Rapa Nui society arrived much later. European contact brought foreign diseases and devastating slave raids that fractured the population. Solving the mechanical puzzle of the stones does not answer every question about the island. Instead, it underscores the brilliant capabilities of a culture whose history and achievements were violently interrupted and largely lost to time. Meet falling from the sky, a completely silent forest, an island of giant stones. By applying biology to the Kentucky anomaly, geology to the Japanese forest, and physics to the Pacific island, we find rational footing. Discovering these factual answers is not the end of the inquiry. It simply reveals the immense, intricate complexity of both the natural world and human history. We still do not know the precise biological origin of the tissue that fell in 1876. We cannot draw a perfect line where the physical geography of Aokigahara ends and the psychological myth begins. And we will never fully recover the lost daily lives of the Rapa Nui people who engineered the Moai. Lacking every single answer does not mean we know nothing. It proves that the pursuit of human history and our understanding of the impossible is never truly finished. If you want to keep exploring factual investigations into the seemingly impossible, subscribe to Mystery and Unsolved Cases. There is always another piece of history waiting to be uncovered.